the train is on time. Sitting downtown in a railway station, one toke over the line. Who do you love? I hope it's me. I've been changing, as you can plainly see. I felt the joy and I learned about the pain, and my mama said, if I should choose to make a part of me, it surely strike me dead. And now I'm one toke over the line, sweet Jesus, one toke over the line.
A song chosen this morning to remind us of how times have changed since 1971. Don't I know it? 1971. If you were alive to see that year, you are ancient. I say that with love in my heart because that was my favorite vintage, 1971. Anyway, how have times changed since 1971? Well, it was in that year that New York radio station WNBC, or if you also want to remember how times have changed, WNBC, or something like that. That is the way that Pig Vomit wanted Howard Stern to announce the call letters of the radio station in New York. Anyway, that radio station, WNBC. If you got that Howard Stern reference, by the way, you and I just became best friends. We certainly did. One Toke Over the Line was banned, the song by Brewer and Shipley, because of its alleged drug references. You think, with One Toke Over the Line, the song also stirred controversy with references to Jesus and Mary, which caused other radio stations to ban the song from their airwaves. It did, though, become an unlikely hit back in 71, reaching number 10 on the U.S. Hot 100. Imagine today banning a song because it made references to Jesus and Mary or drugs. Come on with your coming on. We've come a long way. For better or for worse, depends on your perspective, since 1971. I'm getting worse with age. I am not like a fine wine, I promise you that. 7 minutes after 9 on this Thursday morning, the 27th of March. Welcome to the program. Thank you very much stopping by, spending some of your time with us. I want to give a shout out to Jeff Uthit at the Waterloo Region Record this morning. Good job by you, Jeff. You're trolling us. I know you're trolling us. Front page story about what? Highway 7. Can we maybe, how about this? I'm just issuing a direct plea or suggestion to my colleagues in local media. So any of you who might be listening, Jeff Uthit included, or if you know one of them, how about we call Highway 7 from now on? Can we just collectively refer to it as the highway that will never be built? I love Jeff's story. Don't get me wrong. Freedom of Information requests that the Record filed in order to obtain some information, including that $222 million has been spent on this highway so far. For what? What do we get for it? What can you get for $222 million in Ontario today? Apparently a whole lot of nothing. Good job by us. But the story that Jeff has on the front page of today's Waterloo Region Record reminds us of consultants who back in 2004, that's right, 2004, estimated the cost of the new Highway 7 to be $147 million. So just so you're up to speed with this, we started talking about the expanded Highway 7 in the 1980s, just for the record. In 2004, consultants estimated the cost to be $147 million. We have already spent $222 million, which is well above the $147 million estimate from 2004. And it was 2007 when then Transportation Minister Donna Cansfield with Ontario's Liberal government pledged to build it. The highway was approved back in 2007. There have been 10, count them, 10 transportation ministers since, and the highway does not move. I mean, it kind of moves if you're driving it, but in terms of the expanded, safer Highway 7 between Kitchener and Guelph, it's a whole lot of nothing for $222 million. welcome to Ontario.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
How about we go with just 5? The Farwell Show 5 for this Thursday morning. We'll start with the tariffs. They're coming, and U.S. President Donald Trump means he's serious this time.
We're going to charge countries for doing business in our country and taking our jobs, taking our wealth, taking a lot of things that they've been taking over the years. They've taken so much out of our country. Friend and foe, and frankly, friend has been oftentimes much worse than foe.
Liberal leader Mark Carney calls the tariffs an attack on Canadian workers, while Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre says retaliation is necessary. Number 2, Guelph City Council has passed a resolution that bans unhoused encampments in parks and other green spaces next to schools and daycares. This expands on the sensitive public space bylaw and adds the words, any public space that shares a property line with school or a childcare center, to the list of restricted areas under that sensitive public space bylaw in Guelph. Number 3 on your Farwell Show 5 this morning, a tentative agreement has been reached between the region of Waterloo and QP Local 1656. The offer includes a salary increase of almost 12% to all positions over a 3-year period, with a $1 per hour wage adjustment and a 3.5% increase in the first year, according to the region. Number 4, Waterloo Region's affordable housing crisis set to receive a much-needed boost as Habitat for Humanity Waterloo Region and Activa break ground on a new development in Cambridge. The project, which is located on Shantz Hill, will feature 24 stacked townhomes designed to provide affordable home ownership opportunities for working families. And number 5 on your Farwell Show 5 this morning, the city of Cambridge's flags are flying at half-mast to commemorate a former mayor and one of the last surviving members of the city's first council. At the beginning of Tuesday evening's council meeting, Mayor Jan Liggett announced Erwin Nelson had died over the weekend at the age of 93. And that is your Farwell Show 5 for this Thursday morning. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, Mark Carney handled himself pretty well, didn't he? As hecklers tried to disrupt his rally in Kitchener last night. And how are we responding to the tariffs? Does Donald Trump even know what he's doing? We'll talk about it coming up. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. I had a number of people asking me through the day yesterday, where is Mark Carney going to be holding the rally? We learned in the morning through the Liberal leader's itinerary that he would be stopping in Kitchener. But details were scant early on. Eventually, we would learn that he was rallying at Bingham's, a traditional place for politicians to stop. But I'm curious if all of the questions around where it would be were designed so that those who do not see things the Liberal way could get into the audience and maybe try to disrupt the rally, as happened last evening when Mark Carney was speaking at that rally at Bingham's. But I think he handled himself pretty well.
I'm standing before you today. Very clever, very clever, very clever. This country has given me everything. Gave me my family, my education, my values, which include values of tolerance.
See, you got to admit, that's pretty good, and it wasn't the only disruption. I mean, the disruption might have been Mark Carney's speech or the parts of it in French, but anyway, I find this interesting. Don't ever forget how free a place we are, okay? That you can go into a rally held by the leader of one of your political parties and heckle it to the point that you have to be removed. I guess that's where we're at, right? I don't understand it. I don't get it. But I suppose if we didn't make a big deal out of it the next day, maybe it would stop happening. Kind of like streakers during sporting events, right? Anyway, that's a little bit of what happened during Mark Carney's rally last night at Binghamton's. As I said, I thought he handled it pretty well. The big thing now, of course, for Mark Carney and Pierre Poilievre to handle is the president in the Oval Office in the United States. I'm not really sure this man understands the impact of what he's talking about, though.
We're going to charge countries for doing business in our country and taking our jobs, taking our wealth, taking a lot of things that they've been taking over the years. They've taken so much out of our country, friend and foe, and frankly, friend has been oftentimes much worse than foe. But this is very exciting to me. This is the automobile industry, and this will continue to spur growth like you haven't seen. Before I was elected, we were losing all of our plants. They were being built in Mexico and Canada and other places. Now those plants largely have stopped, and they're moving them to our country. So we'll effectively be charging a 25% tariff. But if you build your car in the United States, there is no tariff. And what that means is a lot of foreign car companies, a lot of companies are going to be in great shape because they've already built their plant. But their plants are underutilized, so they'll be able to expand them inexpensively and quickly.
I suppose if there is an underutilized plant that could be expanded quickly and inexpensively, that's a good thing. But you certainly can't build a new manufacturing plant or a power generating plant overnight. So I'm just not entirely convinced that Donald Trump recognizes the impact on his own economy by applying these tariffs, or anybody in his inner circle. Like, we remember, because history tells us that almost 100 years ago, Smoot-Hawley back in the 1930s was a complete and abject failure when it came to getting involved in a tariff war and trying to protect the United States' interests. Nonetheless, Liberal leader Mark Carney had his response to Donald Trump.
And this is a direct attack, to be clear, a direct attack on the very workers that I stood in front of this morning at the Ambassador Bridge. A bridge that is a symbol and a reality up until now of the tight ties between our two countries, ties of kinship, ties of commerce, ties that are in the process of being broken. We will defend our workers. We will defend our companies. We will defend our country, and we will defend it together.
And of course, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre had his own response, and he made a direct appeal also, Mr. Poilievre did, to those working in the automotive sector, understanding that they are concerned right now for the jobs that provide their livelihood.
The message to President Trump should be to knock it off. We had the best trade relationship in the world, in the history of the world, before these unnecessary interruptions struck our economy. They are hurting both sides of the border. They will kill American jobs, and they will erase American prices. And then we will necessarily have to retaliate.
We will necessarily have to retaliate, Poilievre also calling the tariffs nonsensical. So for anyone who is still of the mind that what you have in Pierre Poilievre is some sort of Donald Trump light, this is the leader of the Conservative Party here in Canada standing up directly against and in opposition to Donald Trump in the U.S., calling the tariffs nonsensical. And if you wondered if the big issue in this federal election was going to be how to deal with Donald Trump, I think Donald Trump is making himself the big issue in this election. The tariffs are applied next Thursday. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. We like to remind you that this is the most interactive radio program anywhere in this region. The moment we begin every morning at 9, our phone lines are open to you, and your participation is not only welcomed, it's encouraged. 519-570-2545, star 570, and 1-800-570-5715. And yes, that participation is welcomed even if your name is Andre. Andre, what could you possibly have on your mind so early in the morning?
I can't believe you guys didn't mention it. But what I'm trying to say is good morning, happy day. And Mark Carney was here yesterday, yes.
Okay, hang on. You can't believe we didn't mention what?
That you said that Mark Carney was here, and you put some clips in. I think the best thing he ever said in his life is this is the city of the Kitchener Rangers.
Okay, but wait. So you can't believe I didn't mention that Mark Carney said it was the city of the Kitchener Rangers?
Yeah.
Did he say that?
Yeah.
Oh.
Ask Mark Douglas.
Okay.
Right, that you're bugging.
I know. I was giving Mark Douglas a hard time because he left his breakfast debris in the studio.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Andre.
So ask him.
Okay, I will. I will ask him. I should pay more attention to the morning news all morning, like I know you do. I get busy putting things together for this show and missed that part. And then I didn't get to hear all of Mark Carney's speech last night. I caught very little bit of it. But see, media was invited to show up by 6:15 or 6:30. It was well after 7 when Mr. Carney began speaking, which is not uncommon with these leaders when they are scheduled at a given time. That time tends to shift. Anyway, I was home and cooled out by the time the rally began and did not get to hear the entirety of the speech. So if indeed Mark Carney wished luck to the Kitchener Rangers and mentioned that this is the city of the Rangers, that's good because the playoffs are about to begin. Playoffs, baby. Here we go. It actually takes me back. Do you remember when former Prime Minister Stephen Harper was here for a Kitchener Rangers game? He was a huge hockey fan, obviously. Prime Minister Harper was. And I remember being up in the broadcast booth before the game and looking down at the ice during the warm-up, and some of the Ranger players up along the boards by the bench were looking up into the rafters of the arena. And I'm like, what the heck are they, like, they're stretching and looking up. And so I looked up, of course, because there got to be something up there to look at besides the banners, right? And sure enough, there was the security detail with their rifles up on the catwalks above the ice to protect, of course, the Prime Minister, who, by the way, met with his fellow hockey fans and posed for photographs and, I presume, signed some autographs during the intermissions. But fans let him watch the game when the game was on. That's what happened when former Prime Minister Stephen Harper came to a hockey game in Kitchener. All right, I've got to get you to the 570 News Center for an update. And then let's talk about the concerns around interference in this election, particularly of the electronic variety. That conversation is coming up here on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio. The federal election campaign is well underway, and you just heard the latest in the series of announcements that will continue up until voting day on April the 28th. That's what we consume from the leaders directly. However, we are being warned that Canada is at a high risk of attack by hostile foreign entities, including possibly from within the United States, who are attempting to meddle with this federal election by covertly spreading false information online. I read that in my morning paper yesterday, and so it leads to this conversation this morning with Elizabeth Dubois, who's a university research chair in politics, communication, and technology, and a member of the Coalition for Information Ecosystem Resilience. Elizabeth, good morning.
Good morning.
What do when we think about interference, and we know, I think it's a concern in our elections today, but in what ways might that interference be happening in this federal election?
Yeah, it's a concern. And, foreign interference is not a new concept, but what we're seeing in this election is some new vulnerabilities, particularly in our online information environment. We've got generative AI increasing the amount of disinformation that can be spread online. We've got tech platforms that are kind of reducing their content moderation and fact-checking work. And so this creates a system that's, really ripe for disinformation, which foreign actors know how to plug into and weaponize.
When I think of foreign actors, I tend to think of hostile regimes. And I guess in some senses we could refer to the United States as a hostile regime now. But with this electronic interference specifically, and given the kind of cozy relationship that's been developed between the U.S. administration and big tech, are popular social media platforms more susceptible than ever to being used as agents of interference?
I do think so. We've always shared a lot of our media and cultural content with the United States. That kind of sharing of ideas online is not all that new, but we are seeing that with the relationship between the big tech companies and the U.S. president and his team, there is a pretty drastic change in how they're dealing with fact-checking, content moderation. And we know that there are U.S. state actors who are being vocal about the Canadian election. We're in the midst of a trade war, and so it is not out of the realm of possibility to imagine that they're going to have a stake in who they want to see win this election. And social media platforms are a place where you can start to shape narratives. And so I would not be surprised to see that happening.
Yeah, I think many of us intuitively understand that this could well be happening. And I guess then it leads to the big question, Elizabeth, and that is what safeguards can be put in place? What can we do to combat this?
Yeah, I mean, frankly, it's really tricky in the middle of an election period because we don't have time to get new policies, laws, regulations up and running. What we can do is rely on some existing systems. So we do have a governmental group called the panel that is on the lookout for foreign interference incidents and things that might be a threat to our election. And so making sure that that panel is functioning properly is a big piece of it. Monitoring the ecosystem to even know when foreign interference is happening is the other huge component. And that's where my work that I do with the Polcom Tech Lab at University of Ottawa and that a coalition of researchers across the country are working together on comes in. We're trying to track things in real time so that we can flag it up to the panel and out to journalists and whatnot so that people can be aware when it's happening.
And I think that's reassuring that we have experts such as yourself, the collection of them in the panel, et cetera, perhaps providing some guidance to institutions, government agencies, departments, et cetera. But what about for us individually? Surely there is some responsibility that we can assume in all of this to ensure we're not being manipulated.
Absolutely. And, you know, there is a certain extent at which we don't have control over the information that comes across our screens. So what we need to do is be critical of what's showing up on our screens, be reading widely, trying to get different perspectives on things, knowing that the information environment is polluted and could be manipulated. The other thing that is kind of neat that we've created in this election through this coalition is a tip line. So if you are scrolling on the internet and you find what you think is an example of foreign interference, you can go to electiontipline.ca and add it in, and then the research teams can go and dig deeper and figure out what's actually happening and then escalate it if it needs to be escalated.
You know, Elizabeth, I'm old enough to remember a time when if we were to talk about interference, it would be physical interference. Somebody would have to be getting in your way with something. And it occurs to me that perhaps this is just the new cost of doing business in a democracy, that these electronic types of interference are the new way of meddling in another government's affairs.
Yeah, I think that this is definitely the new way. I not to say that the old ways are out entirely, right? We still have these physical and offline spaces where interference can happen, but I think it's a new reality that we're going to be seeing online interference. This is already a tool in the toolbox of these foreign entities, and so it's here to stay. I think what's particularly interesting and kind of scary about it is so much of our communication online is very decentralized. So foreign actors can kind of seed messages in one area of the internet and then let our online communities spread it out. So it gets really hard to track, which is different from, you know, the physical space where you've got an actual person that you can track it back to more easily. Yeah,
it is such an interesting time and really appreciate your expertise and perspective on the show this morning. Thank you, Elizabeth, for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Elizabeth Dubois is a university research chair in politics at the University of Ottawa and a communication and technology member of the Coalition for Information Ecosystem Resilience. That's a whale of a title. The bottom line is, as you know as well as I, this is the new frontier when it comes to meddling and interference. Yes, some of those older ways, if you will, the physical manipulation or interference and exchange of information, still exists, but to a much lesser degree than the opportunity that exists on social media platforms and elsewhere to spread misinformation, disinformation, and insert yourself, interfere in some way in another country's election. How worried are you about the information that you consume? Where do you find sources that you can trust? Would love to hear from you on this, because we know it's going on out there. And I recognize that working for a traditional mainstream network, the likes of which I work for, almost puts me at a disadvantage today because of the way mainstream media is viewed. And I get it. I accept that. I can assure you of the checks and balances and vetting that has to go on before anything goes to air or to print in mainstream media. But that being said, do you recognize what is being pushed forward to your algorithm, the echo chamber that begins to result, et cetera? How worried are you about interference, and how do you ensure you are not being led down a misinformation path? 519-570-2545, star 570, 1-800-570-5715. Always interested in your thoughts on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
Foreign interference is not a new concept, but what we're seeing in this election is some new vulnerabilities, particularly in our online information environment. We've got generative AI increasing the amount of disinformation that can be spread online. We've got tech platforms that are kind of reducing their content moderation and fact-checking work. And so this creates a system that's really ripe for disinformation, which foreign actors know how to plug into and weaponize.
Elizabeth Dubois is a university research chair, in politics at the University of Ottawa. Joins us this morning to talk about disinformation from abroad and maybe even right next door in the United States. And experts are warning that foreign meddling in this federal election here in Canada is a legitimate concern. 519-570-2545, star 570, and 1-800-570-5715. Curtis, good morning.
Good morning, Mike. Glad you brought out the fact that you're at a disadvantage with having this topic because you are on mainstream media. Having said that, it's hard for us to believe anything, whether it's disinformation or misinformation from social media or any major news network out there, because they're all based on ratings, as we all know, and the monetary value. We do have a government that was in place that supplied lots of monetary value to the CBC. So it is biased in all accounts, and it's hard for any person out here, even right now, trying to pick a new leader or a new party to take any of the information that we hear, because it's all going to be put into the same pail. It's all lies, and a lot of it is to persuade voters on what the flavor of the day is. Just thought I'd share that with you.
No, and I appreciate it, Curtis, and I get where you're coming from. So where do you tend to get the information that you believe is reliable? Because clearly you're engaged in the issues.
I try to get it from every source and use my own intelligence to see what is truth and what is not. And quite frankly, mainstream media, if there's a political influence in a certain party there, it's hard to take their information as fact.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from, and I appreciate the call. Look, I get it. When you see a public broadcaster being funded to the level that it's funded, it's hard to imagine that it is presenting unbiased information. I will tell you, though, that the people working within that public broadcaster are highly trained, highly skilled journalists, and I'm confident. I am 100% confident that they're not being bought off in any way. And remember, while the CBC is a lightning rod again today, it has continued to be funded under previous conservative governments as well. But I understand that difference between church and state. And what Curtis refers to as using his own intelligence, never has it been more incumbent upon the consumer of information to look at it not so much cynically or skeptically, but with a critical eye to make sure that what you're getting is reporting versus editorial. And there's so much editorial these days. And you have to make the distinction between those two ways of sharing information. This is my opinion, or this is the reporting of a story. And yes, depending on which part of the mainstream media you consume, the Toronto Star, for example, very left. The Toronto Sun, for example, very right. And you can recognize the bias on the pages of those newspapers, for example. Mike, good morning.
Good morning, Mike. I've, like most people, have 2 or 3 social media accounts and stuff like that. And when I see something that doesn't quite click or is kind of outrageous or questionable, what I always do is I go to look for a couple of sources, right? And if it's not corroborated by some mainstream media, then I don't believe it's true. I think we're in a stage right now where we have professional communication managers spinning and spin doctors spinning the message they want you to hear. So I think it's incumbent upon us to go and dig a little deeper. I'll give you an example. There was something in one of the local newspapers, in the Toronto newspapers, and it was a screaming headline about some court case. When I went to check the Ontario Court of Justice transcripts from that case, there was nothing further from the truth. So I think it's incumbent upon us to do our own fact-checking these days. And that's my thoughts for the day, Mike.
All right, Mike, I appreciate that. That's a long way to go to the Ontario Court of Justice transcripts to determine for yourself if what was reported was indeed accurate. But again, there is a lot more responsibility on us today as consumers to sift through what it is we're consuming when it comes to information. Quick break, back with more of your calls on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. It's almost like the old buyer beware, right? Consumer beware. And we as consumers of information have to be more aware and careful than ever to distinguish between editorial/opinion and news reporting, right? What is just the facts of the story? What is somebody telling you their thoughts on those facts? Not to mention the wealth of disinformation and misinformation that circulates online based on somebody's arbitrary yet very clever algorithm. Let's go back to the phones, hear more from you on this. Lisa, good morning.
Good morning, Mike. How are you?
Good, thank you. How are you?
I am okay. So this whole, disinformation and misinformation online, or even what you hear politicians saying they're going to do, can you count on that being factual? On April 1st, is there going to be no more carbon tax? Because Carney signed a sheet that said there was going to be no more carbon tax starting on April 1st. I'll believe it when I see it, but at this point, I am very jaded when when it comes to some of the comments, and I think to try to figure out who to vote for and what to believe, you have to actually look into someone's past actions. Did they say they were going to do something and they actually followed through? Did they do a good job at their last job? Maybe that's something we should take into account too. Like, if you go online or through the history of the newspapers and you see that a certain politician, has a terrible track record with certain things, that's something that maybe you should think about if you're thinking you might vote for them. More so than what they're saying they're going to do now, because if they didn't follow through in the past, are they going to follow through in the future? That's the questions that I'm asking. So anyway, have a good day, Mike.
Thanks, Lisa. Nice to hear from you. Past behaviors are certainly an indicator of present or future behaviors, aren't they? We all can change for sure. So I guess it depends on how far past and what the age and or maturity of the individual was when they did this, that, or the other thing. But certainly one's track record while in office should absolutely come into play if they seek office again. Because, of course, you're rehiring them, or they're being asked, or they're asking you to rehire them for the same job. So how well did they perform it the last time around? All right, I've got to get you to the 570 News Center for an update. And then Preston Springs. Oh, the old Preston Springs Hotel. I was there with so many of you as it came down at the hands of a wrecking ball. Now what's going up is getting some pushback from neighbors. At least one man hopes to get some adjustments to what's being proposed at Preston Springs. We'll hear from him coming up on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. It was once the place where a grand hotel stood. It was a signature, iconic building at the intersection of Fountain and King in Cambridge, the former Preston Springs Hotel. I know we're going over very old ground here, no pun intended, given the age of the hotel. And we know the shape that the hotel was in by the time it finally met the wrecking ball. That was a couple of years ago now, but the plans for the site continue to be in a state of flux, and at least one resident is hoping to have his voice heard when it comes to what's being proposed at the former Preston Springs Hotel site. That someone is Glenn Nihas, who's a resident of Cambridge in the area of the Preston Springs Hotel and joins the show this morning. Glenn, good morning.
Morning, Mike.
What are your concerns with the plans as they currently stand for the site of the former Preston Springs Hotel?
We've got four main concerns. One is what will affect most of us in the area is traffic, really busy intersection. And then we've got concerns around density. It's twice the density that the property across the street is being developed at 255 King Street. It's twice the density, or over twice the density of what's the higher density level that they asked it to be changed to. And actually, I'm in favor with going to that level. It's just that it had been at 75 units per hectare originally, and then they asked it to be changed to 250 units per hectare. And currently, what the developers wanted to do is put 631 units in. It's just a little over a hectare, so it works out to 550 or 548 units per hectare. So it's over double what the zoning allows. So that's the second concern. Third concern is one of the values or the principles of urban planning, I think, is and in the provincial policy statement, is that any new development needs to fit into the neighborhood. And we're just concerned that it's not taken into the neighborhood at all. It's building a six-story podium right up to the edges of the property on the sides, and then these three tall towers. So that doesn't fit into the neighborhood. And the fourth concern is access onto Abraham Street, the back street. And right now there's about 200 houses that in our neighborhood that only have access out of our neighborhood through Fountain Street on two roads, Jacob and Kitchener Road. So having that as an access place would quadruple the number of traffic, because the amount of households using those two streets. So our concern is around access onto Abraham Street, but that's quite specific just to that specific neighborhood.
We've heard in the past, Glenn, about how difficult it is, for example, to fight City Hall. What you're really trying to do here is fight the Ontario Land Tribunal, and that certainly is no easy nor inexpensive task. How do you go about accomplishing this?
Well, that's a good question. I'm new at this, so this is a new territory. So, the odds, what I've heard is like 98% of the rulings go in favor of the developer. So those aren't very encouraging to start with. However, a lawyer I spoke with said that doesn't actually take into account the ones that get settled beforehand. So hopefully there can be some settlement beforehand with three parties. the developer of the city in this. And there was a recent proposal that judgment by the tribunal that really encouraged me. There was a development very similar to Preston Springs in Burlington, where the developer was arguing, the need for housing, and this solves meets the intensification requirements. And the city's response back was, yes, that's true, but it's overdevelopment. It doesn't need to be that big to meet our intensification goals. And that's exactly what we're arguing. Like, we're not arguing against development. It's just that the intensification goals for Cambridge and for the Preston MTSA, the transit area, can be met at the 250 level. So, and the tribunal actually backed that. So there's a glimmer of hope, let's put it that way.
Hey, a glimmer is sometimes all you need, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So you said something there, Glenn, that really strikes me, that you're not against the development, because as I'm sure you know, and maybe you have even heard since taking up this cause, it's got you could be accused of being a NIMBY, not in my backyards.
Exactly. Yeah.
So bluntly, are you opposed to anything at all being built on this site?
No, I mean, I don't think it has to be an either or, and that's the trouble if you make any challenges to what the developer is trying to say. It's not, you're just against housing. I'm actually for housing. And there's obviously some people in our neighborhood that would rather just be left empty. I would prefer something to be built there. I'm fully in favor of it being up to 250, or even maximum. I'd like to be less than 300 units. That would still be a 200, that would still be higher density than 250 units per hectare. And I'm also actually concerned, counterintuitively, I think if this goes through, it's going to actually slow housing down. Because right across the street at 255 King Street, there was a development. It's on twice the size of property. It's got 600 units. So its density works out to about 251 or roughly. And if and it hasn't started being built yet. It was approved several years ago. And then they're doing some preparation on the ground, but nothing actually being built. And if I was those owners, I would be waiting to see what goes through with this. And if it goes through, if the Preston Springs goes through, I would go back to the city and demand that I be allowed to build double the density as well. So that's one concern. It's actually going to slow down anybody that currently has approved. They're kind of waiting to see. The second concern I have is, as soon as if it gets approved of this, prices, the land prices would double. Well, they'd be inflated because the land is based on the number of units you can be built. And so if you can get twice as many units, obviously the price is going to go way up. So I think that's just going to, again, slow actual building of housing down.
Did you talk to anybody at the city before going to the extent of challenging this at the Ontario Land Tribunal?
Oh, yeah. The challenging the tribunal has been the last process. As soon as we found out about the development, we talked, we presented at council. And, I'm really new at this, so, we're trying to learn as we go. So I also met with each of the councillors. I was able to talk personally with each one, except for one. I think one we just talked on the phone just because of schedules. I talked with the city staff as many as I could get in touch with. So the developer or the city planner, the person planning that was actually on this case, and presented our positions and trying to sort of find out what are the needs all around. Can we get those? Can it be a win-win? So yeah, we've tried as much as we can on that.
Glenn, I wish you luck, and I appreciate your time on the show this morning. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Mike. Talk to you later.
Glenn Nyhouse is a Cambridge resident, actually lives in the neighborhood behind, if you will. If you're coming up King and you get to Fountain, you're staring at where the Preston Springs Hotel used to be. There's a neighborhood in behind that hill, if you will. If you took a right on Fountain and went up around that way towards Toyota, et cetera, Maple Grove, that's where Glenn and his neighbors live. You get the story from Glenn about what the concerns are. Put in the development at the current zoning of units per hectare. He's fine with that. Don't overdevelop, which he believes this is. Thoughts from you on the challenge that exists and the likelihood of it being successful? 519-570-2545, star 570, 1-800-570-5715. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
The odds, what I've heard is like 98% of the rulings go in favor of the developer, so those aren't very encouraging to start with. However, a lawyer I spoke with said that doesn't actually take into account the ones that get settled beforehand, so hopefully there can be some settlement beforehand with three parties, the developer, the city, and us. And there's two recent proposals that are judged by the tribunal that really encouraged me. There was a development very similar to Preston Springs.
Glenn Nyhus is a resident who lives in a neighborhood next door to Preston Springs, where the Grand Hotel once stood, now slated for redevelopment. And in a nutshell, believes that what's being proposed for the site is an overdevelopment. Too many units per hectare, more than double what the city's zoning allows for. Not against development per se, or generally wants housing, believes in housing, thinks this is the wrong development for this particular site. Just keep it within what is allowable under the zoning. That's Glenn's contention, and he's got a long way to go. He's got a GoFundMe campaign right now hoping to raise $30,000 so he can do what's necessary to fight this at the Ontario Land Tribunal. That $30,000 fundraising goal is just over $1,000 as of this morning. However, he did come up with more than $20,000 in fundraising from going door to door, word of mouth, from neighbors in the area who are concerned about what's being proposed. As you know, and as Glenn alludes to in that conversation, the Ontario Land Tribunal almost always lands in favor of the developer, who also, by the way, has an appeal before the OLT, because Cambridge City Council rejected what the developer Hosstown Developments was proposing. So the developer takes that to the Ontario Land Tribunal for an appeal, hoping to get its way as opposed to what council wants. And then there's Glenn, all by his lonesome, trying to go against the developer's appeal and what the city of Cambridge is saying and get something that conforms better to what he believes should be on the site. It's pretty twisted. Oh, by the way, we're in a housing crisis, right? 519-570-2545, star 570, 1-800-570-5715. Bob, good morning.
Good morning, Mike, my friend. Oh, boy, oh, boy. What are we going to do?
What are we going to do?
Yeah. Are these developers under the assumption that there's going to be a train coming down right in the middle of all their development?
They might be. I mean, the train should eventually, maybe, come down Sean's Hell.
Well, this is what I'm wondering, because there's got to be a limit. I mean, right now they're, what, $5.5, $6 billion? There's got to be a number where they got to say, you know what, we just can't do this. There has to be a number.
Okay, but irrespective of the train, Bob, I think this is going ahead regardless.
Man. Hey, if you're a billy goat, it's perfect, because it's straight up the hill, isn't it, when we look at it, what they're developing. But for people, no. I mean, we got, Toyota running in and out of there. We got Amazon coming in from the other direction. It's a bypass from the 401, both directions, when there's accidents out there, which is damn near daily. So, I mean, where do these stupider people ever come up with this stuff?
Well, it's a great question, Bob. And I think, well, it comes down to two things. First of all, the developer can make lots of money because we are in this housing crisis, and the more units you can create, the more units you can sell. We all know how that works, right? And cities look at this and say, I mean, we do need the housing, right? Because it is, as I mentioned a moment ago, a crisis. We have so many competing crises right now. Holy Hannah. But we have to get housing built. And so we will put as many units as we can on a given parcel of land. But Bob's onto something here, and this is what Glenn alludes to as well. The impact on the neighborhood. Just think of Fountain and King in Cambridge as it stands today. Think of the traffic there. Think of the traffic impacts there. And then add almost 700 units of housing. I don't know how many people that ends up being. Is it 300-400? How many vehicles do they have that are now being added to that already congested area? Amazon just down the road, as Bob points out. Holy moly, do we have ourselves a snarl. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. I mean, it's going to be a mess, and we can all see it. And I think where we're at right now in terms of housing in the community is, deal with it because we need the housing. I think anyway. Fountain, King in Cambridge, you know what it's like today, and you can imagine what it's going to be like tomorrow when we add some 700 units of new housing at the site of the former Preston Springs. That's what Glenn Nyhaus and his neighbors are pushing back against. Megan on the phone with us this morning. Good morning, Megan.
Good morning.
What's on your mind?
I live in Cambridge in one of the new developments on Pine Bush because, single mom trying to find housing in Cambridge is awful as it is. But
sure.
Traffic there is a nightmare because of it. But twice a week I work in Waterloo. Twice a week I have no choice but to drive Highway 8 down Shonts Hill and up King Street. And yesterday was one of those days, and the 401's closed, westbound 401's closed, and it was an absolute nightmare to get, the amount of traffic. It was standstill, and this happens anytime there's an accident, and it was standstill all on Fountain Street, Shonts Hill, King Street. It was half an hour of what should have taken 2 minutes.
Yeah, see, and you're going King to Eagle, right, and then going out to Hespeler that way.
Yeah. And so this morning I just did the drive, and I'm going to Waterloo, and it's nothing.
Right.
There's no, I timed it properly, but when there's when there's an accident or when the Toyota shift lets out, anything like that, it is already a nightmare. And I grew up in Cambridge. I remember the Preston Springs. I know that we need affordable housing. I get it. I'm one of those who searched to be able to find a rental that I could afford. But I have no idea how they're going to handle the congestion. And that's all. That's all I have to say, because yesterday was driving through there was an awful nightmare. So.
It's a great example. I appreciate you calling in, Megan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to hear from you. And see, that's today, or yesterday in this case, right? Now think of the impact when you add 700 units of housing to the same area, when the shift change still happens daily, when there are collisions on the 401 almost daily. And what Megan said about growing up in the area, knows what it used to be like, knows what it's like today. It takes me back to the conversation we've been having about the Victoria Commons development in Kitchener this week and the proposal for even higher towers, which will be 3 of a group because more towers are coming to a nearby area. And one of our callers described that Kitchener is feeling more like Mississauga now. We get it. Megan gets it. We all understand the need for the housing. I guess what I'm saying here, and I thought about this yesterday while I was walking the dog. I don't have to like it. You can't make me like it. I understand it, but I don't have to like it. And you can just see, what's coming in terms of the impact on our communities. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio.
Hookah chaka, hookah, hookah, hookah chaka, hookah, hookah, hookah chaka, hookah, hookah, hookah chaka, hookah, hookah. I can't stop this feeling deep inside of me. Girl, you just don't realize what you do to me. When you hold me in your arms so tight, you let me know everything's all right. I'm hooked on a feeling.
Oh, it's that Thursday morning feeling. Every Thursday morning, 10:30, our good friend Gary Chalk joins the program. Gary is the writer of the humor column Living Retired. You'll find it online, livingretired.press. While you're there, make sure you sign up for the weekly newsletter. That column will appear right in your inbox. I always get a chuckle out of it. And Gary brings his talents to our program on Thursday mornings. Mr. Chalk, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Mike with a mic. Oh, and happy my aunt died day.
You're thinking ahead on our show this morning. I think you're saying that because that means if your aunt died, you might not be at work so you can watch the Blue Jays.
My goodness, you're smarter than I thought. You're more than just a pretty face, Mike.
I may face for radio, Gary, as you know. I may have used a similar, well, maybe not that excuse, but something like that to get out of work, yes.
Yeah, well, it was amazing. One of my teachers once said, "How many aunts do you have?"
We will be talking about stories just like that in about an hour on the Flipside this morning because it is Blue Jays opening day, and I know many find a mysterious illness or reason to be absent, for sure.
You're right. Oh, and I also want to say I've got my tickets. We'll see you at the Farwell for Hire launch party. Looking forward to it.
That's fantastic. I can't wait to see you and Jan spend some time together away from our weekly radio visits. And we're going to have some fun on May the 1st.
Jan's plan, she said, "Gary, I want you to eat so much food from the village caterers that you're so stuffed that you promise you won't get up onto the dance floor when something's always flying starts."
Listen, we cannot be held responsible for what happens at a party, Gary, right?
You're right. Hey, listening last week, I heard you talking with the audiologist, and March 3rd was National Hearing Day. And I said to Jan, "Did you hear that March 3rd was National Hearing Day?" And then I said, "Jan, did you hear March 3rd was National Hearing Day?"
Pardon? What?
Pardon? Did you say something? You know, there's a telltale sign, Mike, for hearing loss amongst men. You see it at house parties all the time. Guys are standing in their sock feet at the kitchen island devouring the shrimp platter, and they're talking to the other guests. And what they do is they stare intently at each other's lips when they're speaking because they're trying to hear what they're saying. For some men, Mike, this is the first time they've raised their eyes up to look at a woman's face since their teenage years. Just saying. Hey, and do you know what another common sign is that you and your spouse need to have your hearing tested?
What's that?
Well, it's when you're speaking with each other, but you don't hear the words. And this, Jan and I, it's been driving us nuts. We were in Arizona recently. Jan said, and I'm not making this up, she said, "Gary, I'm taking a walk." And I said, "Jan, why are you baking a hawk?" It sounded like some wacko diet. So then it happened a couple of nights ago. She said, "Gary, let's do the dishes." And I said, "Mary, let's chew the fishes." You know, you don't hear the words enough. So about a week ago, I took it all into my own hands, and I came up with my very own living, retired, do-it-yourself hearing test, which any guy can do. It's a simple device found in men's bathroom cabinet. And I'm not talking about nasal strips. Now, what it is, Mike, is it's an electric razor. I know it sounds sort of hairy, but work with me on this.
Okay.
I turned the razor on and held it up to my right ear, and what I heard was bzzz.
So far, so good.
Yeah. Then I switched over, held the razor to my left ear, and that's what I heard. Bzzz. See, that's it. If it wasn't for the hair in my chinny chin, I wouldn't have discovered I was suffering hearing loss in my right ear. And I thought this was ingenious because now, knowing what I know, that I hear better in my left ear, so now I'm taking this into account when Jan and I go shopping. This is what I mean. We were in Zayres, and I'm pushing the grocery cart. We're in the refrigerated food section. And I push the cart, so Jan is speaking into my right ear. That's the bad ear,
That's
right?
the bad ear, yeah.
Yeah. So then she says, "Gary, let's get some tofu." Can't hear her. It works like a charm. The same thing when I go down the snack food aisle. Go down the snack. You'll like this one. Going down the snack food aisle. Jan's standing beside my right ear, the bad one. And she'll give me an earful about eating too many chips. You don't hear her.
That's right. So just fill the cart with chips, Gary.
That's right.
Perfect.
It's the latest. You know, I feel like Ron Pope, when that famous inventor, when he came up with spray hair in a can. I felt the same eureka moment when I came up with this thing. Any guy who's got an electric razor can do the same thing.
And you can then determine which of your ears you hear best or worst out of and use it to your advantage.
Exactly.
Perfect.
Yeah. So now that I've got my hearing looked after, and this is all timely because I have a birthday this Sunday. So with my hearing all looked after, what I'm thinking now, and I'm being encouraged by Jan, to tell you the truth, she says that, Gary, you need to address our closets and begin to dress for success.
Now, Gary, listen, I've seen you in person before. You are a very dapper dresser. Come on.
Well, the other topic you need to have somebody on now is to talk about loss of vision. Oh, my goodness. I mean, you got to be able to dress for success and be the part, particularly, I find, when you have grandchildren. Our granddaughters are 10 and 12, and they're at that point where, sometimes they don't want to be with Grandma and Grandpa, well, particularly Grandpa, because, if I'm looking like I'm trying to be hip, yeah, they don't agree with it.
They can see right through it.
Oh, see right through it, just like that. So, what I'm thinking of doing is changing my wardrobe over, but where I need to start is I don't have a clue about is which way my ball cap should point.
Gary, all the kids have it pointing backwards. I don't know why, but they all point backwards now.
They do.
Yeah.
You feel like Johnny Bench.
Exactly. And the kids won't understand that one.
Well, that's the other thing. I said to our 12-year-old, well, it's like Johnny Bench. Who's Johnny Bench?
All right, let's get into those challenges that we face when we try to dress for success as we continue with Gary Chalk this morning. He writes the humor column Living Retired, and he joins us on the show every Thursday morning at this time to bring it to the program. It's the Mike Farwell Show on 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Thursday mornings, 10:30, we're joined by our good friend Gary Chalk. He writes the humor column Living Retired and brings that perspective to our show every Thursday morning at this time. We've talked about that hearing test that you can use to your advantage. Hope you were taking notes. And we also understand, as Gary is about to celebrate a birthday, that there comes a time in every man's life, Gary, where they must dress for success. But it's easier said than done.
Oh, tell me about it. I mean, what really started, I put my ball cap on backwards, and Jan said, Gary, you look foolish. So that was the end. It didn't feel comfortable back that way.
No.
Anyways, I grew up in what they call the BC era, which stands for Beaver Cleaver era, and that's when we wore our ball caps pointing forward, right? Well, now, living retired, I am in what they call the HCHBP era, which is high cholesterol, high blood pressure era, right? And like I said, everybody's pointing their ball caps backwards. And as I said, I tried it once, and Jan said, well, the girls will just run away, your grandchildren. But anyways, so off the top of my head, baseball caps pointing backwards is really just the tip of the iceberg for baby boomers like me to be able to dress cool. Here's some issues I'm having going through our closet.
Okay.
Blue jeans. Have you kept up with the blue jeans craze?
There's a craze? I mean, I've been wearing the same blue jeans for my whole life.
Well,
I mean, not the same pair, but come on. Jeans are jeans, right?
Right. Well, there's bell bottoms, there's regular fit blue jeans, then we had stretch denim, relaxed fit blue jeans, then it was faded blue jeans, and the craze I never got into was they were designed so the fit didn't fit your waist, and said they were sort of like, plumber's pants. They hung down barely over your crotch. and now it's the pre-ripped jeans. This
yes.
Baffles me, right? You buy your pants already ripped.
That's right.
There's something about these marketing people. They're genius. I keep thinking, why didn't I think of that? But when I was a kid, when I ripped my pants, my mom ironed a patch over top of them. Do you remember those days?
Are you kidding me? I had several pairs of pants with patches. Yes.
Yeah. I'm so fashion backwards, I guess, that I'm starting to figure out, do you iron a crease in your blue jeans or not? I mean, that's where I am when it comes to blue jeans. But then go to socks. Think of your socks.
What do you mean, think of my socks? I never think of them except when I can't find them.
Well, that's it. But
did the dryer eat another pair of my socks or another single? Yes, I wear them.
Yeah. Well, it used to be that, we wore comfortable socks. That was what you did.
Yeah.
How many guys do you see these days now? They're going sockless.
Gary, I can't understand. remember now, I was a teenager of the 1980s, Miami Vice, Don Johnson, Sonny Crockett, right?
Yep.
Okay, but he wore like these canvas loafers of some sort. I see these guys, and by these guys, I mean the players with the Kitchener Rangers, who are always doing the no socks thing in dress shoes. How can that be comfortable, Gary?
Well, it can't be, and I'm here to tell you it isn't, because I did it once. Last Christmas, we went to an open house at friends of ours, so I didn't wear my socks. I thought, I'll be cool. Well, I got 20 minutes later, we pulled into their place, walked into the front foyer and their front door. I was down on my hands and knees because I couldn't pry my shoes off because my feet were sweating so much in just 20 minutes with no socks. And Jan kept saying, something smells like hop equipment back
Exactly.
here. I don't get it. Underwear, that's the next one. Now, when I grew up, I mean, this one really gets my knickers in a knot, I got to tell you. In my day, the popular men's underwear was a brand that every time all us guys got to the gym in high school, we had to change into our shorts. Do you know how embarrassing it was in front of all your other teenage friends? You pull down your pants, and there's your underwear that says, Fruit of the Loom.
Absolutely. What else was there? There was another kind?
Yeah, but, you know, I didn't want to be caught wearing Fruit of the Loom. These days, it's changed. What's the underwear men are wearing? Under Armour. Now, I'll just let that one go. Just stop it right there. Let's talk about hoodies. Jan bought me one of those hoodies last summer, and I'm telling you, Mike, the fashionistas who came up with these hoodies, they neglected the live and retired set. I mean, I dangle reading glasses on a cord around my neck. So I'm in the men's change room, and I try to yank the hoodie over top my head. Darn near strangled myself.
Because you got the cord from your glasses all tangled up.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, here's another one. Fitted shirts. You wear fitted shirts?
Hell no. I got to hide everything under there, Gary.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
Jan laughs. She says, Gary, that shirt's tighter on you than a bowl of leftovers wrapped up in saran wrap. It's not a pretty picture.
Exactly.
More fashion news for the baby boomers. Shoes. The style of shoes is changing faster than your wife can decide what color to repaint the front door. At first, it was a pair of loafers, simple loafers. Then you had loafers with tassels.
Oh, I remember those.
Then came along Oxford, and then they were followed by Brogues. Then more recently, Doc Martens. It goes on and on and on. These days, tell me, Mike, why is it guys will get a nice, expensive Hugo Boss suit or whatever. They look really sharp, and then they put on running shoes.
I know. It's the thing. It's the thing, Gary.
I don't know. Jan said, Gary, you put on running shoes, you're going by yourself. So I put on running shoes.
And then you went by yourself.
Anyways, you know what? I did think back to ball caps. I was thinking, if it's trendy to turn the ball cap backwards, what I think I'm going to do is try to start a new fashion statement. I'm Mike. It may happen at the Farwell for hire launch.
Okay.
If I wear a tie, I'm going to wear it down the back of my back, hanging down towards my rear end. It may catch on.
Hey, listen, if you want to promote your best assets, then that might be the way to do it. I look forward to it, Gary.
I'll tell you, bottom line, men's wardrobes are defined as casual, smart casual, and business casual. I'm waiting for casual wear for dummies.
Perhaps you and I could work on the book together.
That's right. And Jan, she says, Gary, she always gets the last words. She said, what you got to do is what Mike does. Get yourself into Channers and Waterloo.
It's the way to do it, Gary. And Mark will make you feel like $1 million and look almost as good.
Oh,
I promise you that.
Oh, I'm sure of that. It'll be probably one of his case studies of how I turned bad to pretty good.
Absolutely. If he's only got so much to work with me, but he can make it happen. He can make it happen. Gary, keep trying, buddy.
I will. Happy my aunt died day.
And to you as well, my friend. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Gary Chalk, the humor columnist who writes Living Retired and joins us on the show every Thursday morning at this time to bring the column to life. You can find it for yourself, livingretired.press. And while you're there, you can sign up for the weekly newsletter, the column delivered right to your inbox. And then Gary joins us on Thursday mornings We have a little bit of fun together here on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Another day on the federal election campaign trail, another day full of promises, the likes of which we may or may not be able to afford. I'll take may not be able to afford for 500, Alex. Wait, there is no 500. I'll take it for 2,000 because that seems to be the direction that we're headed. I came across this from Mike Moffat yesterday, the housing expert whose advice is so relied upon here in the country. Mike posted to social media, "If I knew nothing about Canada except the promises from the three parties, I'd conclude that the federal government must have a large budget surplus and no pressing need to invest in productivity, infrastructure, or defense." We'll keep you up to date with all of those pledges being made with our updates from the 570 News Center today. We're getting set for Blue Jays baseball. The season and a home opener is this afternoon, and we're going to have a little bit of fun with that in about 30 minutes' time, because I'm sure there has been a time, whether it be for a baseball game or some other reason, that you just felt it unnecessary to go to work. So we'll share some stories and assure you of your anonymity on the Flipside at 11:30 this morning. Even before we get there, a series of culture talks continues. What makes a great neighborhood within a city? We'll explore that before 11:30. And right after this update from the 570 News Center, let's talk about the Highland Ball put on by our Royal Highland Fusiliers of Canada. Stay with us on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio. Less than 2 weeks away from just over 2 weeks from the annual Highland Ball put on by our Royal Highland Fusiliers of Canada. It will be 2 weeks this Saturday, set for April the 12th. Joining me in studio, Jane Klugman, who's the honorary colonel with the Royal Highland Fusiliers of Canada. Great to see you as always. Good morning.
Good morning, Mike. Good to see you too.
Can we start with that part for just a moment here? The honorary colonel, you, Jane Klugman, I believe the first ever female to hold the role.
That is correct. Yes. So I was the lieutenant colonel for 3 years, now the honorary colonel for the last 4 years. So started in 2018, and the unit itself is older than Canada. It was started in 1866. So in that whole entire history, I'm the first female, which is a huge, huge honor. And it's a ministerial appointment, so an appointment by the Minister of National Defense. So there is quite a bit of application and study that goes into the application itself to become the honorary colonel.
What inspired you to pursue this?
I was on the council, which is like an advisory board for the unit. And I started on the council in 2012. I was asked by Tom Jenkins, actually, who's the chairman of the board of Open Text. And I came onto the council. They were trying to diversify the council and bring some women into the unit. And I was intrigued, to say the least, by all of the tradition, all of the things that this unit did that I really knew nothing about. And I suspected the community knew very little about as well. And so that's really a big chunk of my role, is to explain to the community that, first of all, we're here. Second of all the good things that we do. We're a reserve unit. And what that means is that our soldiers, they parade and train one night a week and 1 weekend a month, which is the minimum that they do, because it's usually a lot more than that. And they all sign up to serve Canada and to serve our country. They deploy if they're asked, if they put their hand up to deploy, as right now in this situation that we're in. And we've got about, I think, 20 to 30 are going to be deployed over the next year to year and a half.
Incredible. Mm-hmm. Incredible. Right from here in our community.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we have two armories. One is right by the Odd in Kitchener, and then our main armory is in Galt at One Valor Place. So right downtown Galt. And We have about 220 soldiers within our unit. So it is one of the strongest units in 31 Brigade.
You talk about that armory in Galt, and what an opportunity and nice segue into the Royal Highland Ball in 2 weeks' time on Saturday, April the 12th, because it's going to take place there at the Armory.
That is correct,
Yeah,
yes.
so-
Right on the parade square. And we'll have cocktails upstairs in the officers' mess, which in itself is a museum of history and tradition and battle honors and all of the things that make the Royal Highland Fusiliers of Canada what they are. So the public doesn't get to go into the building very often.
Exactly.
So it is a huge opportunity to go and see what has happened in the past and talk to the officers of the day and see what they're doing, see where they've been deployed, see who will be deployed, because a lot of them are going to be leaving in the next 6 to 12 months. So it'll be a very interesting time.
And this is an evening, Jane, steeped in tradition, isn't it?
It sure is.
Yeah.
So this year we have something very different. We have a band and choir coming from the UK. So this is a band of 13 to 18-year-olds. And I think there's 42 or 44 within the choir and the band together. And they will be performing a couple of numbers for us, singing and playing, which is really, really exciting. And they've done some tours. They will be coming. They'll be hitting Montreal, Toronto, and then they found out that we're doing our gala, so they asked if they could come and perform at our gala as well, and we said, for sure. So we've got them. Then we have the Robin Reed Project, which is another band that will play on into the night so there can be dancing after all of the festivities and traditions have happened. And then we have our Pipes and Drums Band. So when we talk about the traditions of the Royal Highland Fusiliers of Canada, we are a Highland unit, which means that we have a lot of traditions. Pipes and drums is absolutely one of them. We are a kilt-wearing unit. So our pipes and drums come out in full kilts and when you see them, you just can't believe that how great they are. And when you hear them, if you've ever heard pipes and drums up close, it's eerie and it's amazing and it's beautiful. And I think our Pipes and Drums Band is the best in the land. So it's something to see. And our pipe major does the Ode to the Haggis. And it is truly a theatrical performance that is not to be missed, and it is so much fun.
It certainly is. I've seen one once, and it's a tremendous performance. Why do we do this, Jane? What's it for?
Good question. So we raise money for the soldiers. So as a kilted unit, we have extra costs that other pants-wearing units don't have. But it's also to support the soldiers. It could be for their mental health. All of the money raised, we have a trust that is part of the council. And so the monies go into the trust, and then the trust decides how those monies get dispersed. And it could be to help support the families while soldiers are deployed. It could be to help the soldiers in certain situations, could be economic, could be financial, more month at the end of the money and various different things. And it could go also to supporting just the uniforms that we wear so that when the band does go out and play in tattoos or whatever they're doing, they look sharp.
We are coming up on that time to reserve our seats at the table. How can we do that, Jane?
Today is the last day.
Today is the last day. Okay.
Yeah. So rhfc.ca is the website, and you can register there. We're still looking for sponsors. We're still looking for silent auction items. We can always use more, and we've got a great amount. We are getting close to capacity on the seats. So if anybody is interested in experiencing this amazing evening, sign up today, please, because it is worthwhile. I
can hear it just coming through your voice. This is a meaningful regiment in our community. It really is. Well, in the country, frankly, but to have it right here in our community as well.
Absolutely. It is. And I still say I can talk about it to 10 people, and of those 10 people, 5 to 6 may still not know what it is. And I know a lot of people, so I'm out talking all the time about it. But it is a meaningful regiment. It has done so many things over the history of the regiment. And, if you talk to some of the former commanding officers who will be at the ball, they will give you history. They go so deep on this that it's a truly a history lesson. I took one of my friends through the Armoury the other week, and he wrote me this long thank you about, the traditions we need to remember, we cannot forget. And he said it was just one of the most amazing experiences that he has had, and the ability to go through that Armoury and see everything.
And that's going to be the site for the Royal Highland Ball. It's on Saturday, April the 12th. You can still get a ticket. We'll squeeze you in. Get to the website today, rhfc.ca. Sponsorship as well, silent auction items, any support you can offer to these men and women in uniform right here in our community. Jane, thanks for everything you do, and thanks for being here this morning.
Thank you so much, Mike.
Jane Klugman joining us. She is the honorary colonel of the Royal Highland Fusiliers of Canada. Again, rhfc.ca. The Royal Highland Ball is coming up on Saturday, April the 12th. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. The Kitchener-Waterloo Art Gallery, or KWAG, is hosting another series, or a continuing series, of what it calls Culture Talks. These are conversations between artists, architects, city builders, and they look at different ways, public art projects, placemaking, ways of building community. The next Culture Talk comes up on Thursday, April the 10th. Its keynote speaker will be Mitchell Cohen, who's the president and CEO at the Daniels Corporation and who joins us on the show this morning. And Mitchell, I know it's kind of a big, hairy question, but I think it's the place to start. What is it that makes for a great community?
I think the elements are people who are engaged in their neighborhood, and that engagement sort of brings people together to talk about issues that they care about. And I've certainly, in getting to know some people in Kitchener-Waterloo region, finding this tremendous engagement. And I'm thrilled to have been invited by KWAG, by the art gallery, because they are really stimulating discussion at the local level about the future of the community, about engagement, bringing people together. So I think that's where it starts, Mike. It starts with people able to talk to each other about the issues of concern to them, and then coalescing strategies on how to build a stronger community, how to ensure that other voices are allowed to be spoken.
How is it that our built environment, the buildings, the places, the green spaces around us can foster this engagement and this sense of community?
Well, I think designing spaces that really are thoughtful with respect to bringing people together is so important. But there's two parts to it. One is the design and create great spaces that sort of encourage interaction, encourage the building of social cohesion by allowing people to come together. But there's more than that, though, Mike. It's really important also to think about programming some of those spaces and allowing groups from the community, the license, the ability to organize, to use the spaces, to not put up barriers to use, but actually find ways to encourage people, individuals, but also nonprofit groups from the community to use those public spaces, again, as a forum, as a way to bring people together. So there's two things. There's design, but there's also a management plan and a plan to using the space to really foster that social cohesion.
Through this lens, Mitchell, can we take any neighborhood, maybe one, and I'm thinking, of course, of Regent Park in Toronto, a revitalization for which you're so well known. Can we take any existing neighborhood, any existing community within a city and return it to its former grace, much like Regent Park?
Well, we can. I think the key learning from Regent Park is that if the plan or if the evolution comes from the ground up, as I said at the outset, local voices drove the Regent Park plan. Every community will be different. Every community will have their own issues and ideas as to what is needed. So what Regent Park really has done is create what I call a process map. The outcomes may be different. The specific programs and spaces will be different from community to community. but it's all about collaboration and partnership. And if you use that lens of collaboration and partnership and couple that with the notion of from the ground up, local voices, and then those local voices coalesce around what the real important issues are, and then open the door to partners, to collaboration from the private sector, from the public sector, and certainly from the philanthropic and nonprofit sectors. You know, there's another sector that is so important and was so important in Regent Park is the institutional post-secondary education. And, you know, Waterloo has this amazing Kitchener-Waterloo region. The Waterloo region has this enormous well of expertise at the universities. And engaging the universities in community on the ground is something that was very powerful in Regent Park. And again, that concept that can be applied anywhere. We refer to it, it's a term that Merrick Gertler, the president of university, came up with. It's communiversity. It's having the community, the university engaged on the ground in community. Very powerful opportunity for all sectors to be engaged and involved in building community.
What experiences shaped you, Mitchell, inspiring you to this work?
I think it really started for me. I was a very young fellow. I had my first job at the YMCA. This was in Montreal. I was a community worker fresh out of university. And I was in a very low-income community that actually was very similar to Regent Park, only it was in Montreal. Post-war housing, 3-story brick walk-ups. The landlord, in that case, it was privately owned, and the private sector landlord issued eviction notices to his tenants, giving them 30 days to vacate, to get out, to go find a new place to live at a moment in time when the vacancy rate was less than 1%. There was no affordable housing in Montreal at that moment. And I think the moment, Mike, that really struck me is the tenants come running to me, their community worker from the YMCA, with their eviction notices in hand. And, you know, the fear, the anxiety was palpable. And I felt at that moment a real responsibility and obligation to do something. And I think it was that moment, you know, just sensing and seeing how the ground was shifting under the feet of so many people who had lived in this neighborhood, in these apartments for years, in fact, decades, some of them. And all of a sudden they had 30 days to get out. That's really what started the trajectory of my work in affordable housing, my work with community groups, doing everything that I could do, either when I was in the nonprofit sector, creating co-op housing, or in the private sector with the Daniels Corporation, where a huge part of our business has been since 1984, working with community groups, using our expertise as a private sector developer builder to create affordable housing in collaboration, in partnership with community groups.
Really looking forward to having you here in the region to participate in this culture talk. And again, appreciate your time on the show this morning. Thanks very much for being here.
Thank you, Mike.
Mitchell Cohen, President, CEO of the Daniels Corporation and the author of the book Rhythms of Change, about that revitalization of Regent Park in Toronto. He will be here on Thursday, April the 10th for the next Culture Talk through the Kitchener-Waterloo Art Gallery. Learn more at KWAG, KWAG.ca. This is the Mike Farwell Show on 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. If you were listening to Gary Chalk with Living Retired an hour ago, Gary referred to this as Happy Your Aunt Died Day. Not that we want anybody's aunt or family member to pass away, but the joke was and is that it's Blue Jays opening day, and it's the kind of day where you might come up with an excuse to not be at work. I feel like we've arrived at a new place insofar as that is concerned, whereby we just say, look, I want to go to the Jays game today. I'll work remotely or I'll make up the time later. But there was another time in a different place where we would either say the dog ate my homework or my aunt died in order to get out of school and or work. We want to share those stories on the flip side. In honor of Blue Jays opening day, tell us the story, we assure you, of your anonymity today, of the time you played hooky from work. I'll tell you my story if you tell me yours. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio. Today is the Blue Jays season and home opener. And I know it's a new age. Heck, they advertised work from Dome in past years because, you know, we do a lot of that these days, work remotely, don't we? But the day being opening day for the Blue Jays takes me back to a bit of a bygone era when a lot of people would suddenly mysteriously find themselves too sick to come to work on a day like today because they were going to the Jays game and they had to come up with an excuse for their boss. So it got me thinking about the times that we did that. Maybe it was for a Blue Jays game. Maybe it was for something else. But I know that you have a story. We promise you your anonymity on the show. But I thought we'd spend the flip side talking about the time we played hooky. When did we do it and why? Could be from school. We all did that too, right? Or could be from work. I think as adults, if we carry those behaviors into our professional years, it makes it all the more interesting. So do share your story, would you? 519-570-2545, star 570, and 1-800-570-5715. George is already on the phone. I mean, should I call you George today, or do you want to go by a different name? All right, what's your story? When did you fake it, George?
Now, Mike, you have to remember, I was in my 20s when I did this. We wanted to go play golf in Michigan. I don't know why Michigan. I was in my 20s. It was Friday morning. I'm feeling sick. I'm not coming in. Soon after that, we were down the 401 towards Michigan. We got 3 rounds of golf in Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. It was great.
Okay, but what did you tell your boss?
I probably just told him I wasn't feeling well or whatever, yeah.
So you had this mysterious Friday 4 flu.
Right.
Right.
I was in my 20s. I was naive, thinking I was going to get away with it. He probably knew I was, trying to get out of it. But, yeah, that's the story.
Attaboy, George. Listen, the Lynx were calling, and by Friday 4, I meant 4 in the golf sense. I remember doing this the very first time I did this, and you're growing up, right? You have to learn the ways of the world. I was doing a simple weekend job. I had one shift. I had the overnight shift on Saturday, and I didn't want to go in that weekend, so I just called in and said there'd been a death in the family. Typical, traditional, it's the old dog ate my homework trick. I'm sure my manager knew and just had to schedule somebody else, and that was the end of that. I did that job in high school and a little bit beyond. And of course, in high school, I also, on occasion, would be known to skip a class or two. All the more difficult for me because my father was the principal of my high school. So the vice principal always had to deal with me if I got caught, which did happen on at least one occasion. I was dumb, though. I remember skipping classes and being foolish enough to go near enough to the school that I could be seen from a classroom window. And my classmates told me that the teacher saw me and said, "Oh, there's Mike Farwell. He's supposed to be in my class right now." And I was not in the class. I was out probably coming back from the arcade in downtown Kitchener because that's where my school was. But when it comes to my professional life, and this is where, and I don't know if I'm proud of this. I'm definitely not proud of it per se. Like I entered into agreement with my employer and I said, I will do the job for the wage that you're offering. And I should respect that agreement. I also get sick time and holiday time and whatnot have you time. So I feel some guilt still all these many years later for taking advantage the way that I did, but I did it. And so here's how it went. And no, I'm not going to make excuses for myself because all I'm doing is making excuses. I'm like, if you add up all the sick days I've taken over all the years, I've hardly taken any, blah, blah, blah. So what? I did what I did. And here's what I did. I can't claim to be George's age. I was not in my 20s. This is early days with this very company. Here you go. I started here back in 2007, so 18 years ago this summer. I could have been late 30s then, I guess. And I'm just going to be honest. I had a manager I did not get along with at all. He's not here anymore. And he was a full-on 100% jackwagon. 100%. I'll say it till my last breath. I'd say it to his face. You were a jackwagon. I might not have been saying it back then because I was younger and less comfortable in my own skin. Anyway, didn't like him. Made it really difficult to come to work. And we also, in this business, used to have 16 weeks per year, 2 weeks in the fall and 2 weeks in the spring. Or pardon me, 2 months. 8 weeks in the fall, 8 weeks in the spring, where we were not allowed to take vacation time because these were the times that the ratings were on, you see. And when the ratings were on and we were being measured on our audience size, all the main on-air people had to be on the air. So it blocked out 16 weeks every year. You only get 52 weeks in a year. All of a sudden, the staff is fighting over the remaining 36 weeks to find their vacation time. Anyway, you couldn't take time. It was forbidden to take vacation time during these particular months in the fall and in the winter. And just out of spite, strictly out of spite, because this manager just made coming to work so miserable, my buddy and I concocted the plan because he'd been bugging me. Let's go away. Let's do something. Let's take a long weekend. I'm like, I can't. It's ratings. Anyway, in order to get back at the boss, out of spite, I just all I did was call in sick. And I called in sick so I could go to New York. And my buddy and I, and we did it, unlike George, who took off on a Friday to go down to Michigan to golf. We did like a Wednesday, Thursday, or a Tuesday, Wednesday. I can't remember exactly which, but I deliberately avoided the Monday, Friday to try to avoid the whole, long weekend on either end thing, which I thought would be a little more suspicious. So a couple of days, middle of the week, and we drove down to Toronto, hopped on a Porter flight, went to New York for about 36 hours or so. And I did it strictly. I wasn't sick at all, obviously, but I called in sick and said, can't come in. Sorry, I know it's ratings. You're going to have to live without me. I imagine if the station actually, how could they possibly have lived without me? Anyway, I did it. I called in sick to this very radio station because I was upset with the boss who made my life miserable. And I thought, to heck with you. I'm taking sick time and I'm going to go to New York. And so I did. So that's my story. If I can admit it, and look, they know, I wonder if retroactively I can be punished for this. Do I owe the company 2 days now for those 2 days I took back in like 2008 or 9? I don't know. 519-570-2545, star 570, 1-800-570-5715. If any of my lawyer friends, particularly labor lawyers, would like to let me know if I've now run afoul of the company all these years later, let me know. Too late to take it back, but that's what I did. And I know at some point, for some reason, you did it too. Blue Jays game, a golf trip like George, just because your boss was a jackwagon? That's the question we're asking you on the flip side today. Dave, good morning.
Good morning, Mike.
What's your story?
This is decades ago.
Okay.
I was in high school, and we were excused from the school in the afternoon if we went to the football game. Well, I had no interest in the football game, but I definitely was not interested in staying in school either.
Of course not.
So I went to the movie theater and watched the 007 movie, Goldfinger.
Really?
I really did. And I was called the next day. I went into school like nothing happened, and I was called into the office and asked where I was yesterday. And I said I was at the football game. And they said, well, nobody saw you at the football game. And I said, well, that's not my problem. And I went home with my day.
That's a pretty good way to spend a time away from school, Dave, going to a movie.
And I enjoyed it tremendously.
I'll bet you did. Appreciate that call. There you go. You're supposed to go to the football game. It's the whole pep rally idea. You don't have interest in the football game, so you duck into a movie theater. You know what Dave just reminded me of? Another time, I was at a conference for work. I had less than zero interest in sitting around this conference. So I did exactly what Dave did. I went in for the morning. I did the socializing, had my breakfast and my, like my little pastry squares and cup of coffee, whatever. And I sat in for the first session from like 9 till 10:15, whatever it was. And then in between sessions, on the way to session number 2, I mysteriously disappeared. And I did the same thing. I went to a movie. This was in Toronto. Lots of options, lots of things to do. And I went back to the conference around 3:30 for the final session of the day. Sat there for that and then called it a day. My work conference that time was a movie-going experience. Who doesn't love that in the middle of the day when you're supposed to be at work or a conference? You go to a movie instead. Dave did it instead of going to school. So I played hooky on a conference, and I called in sick to go to New York City just because I was ticked with the boss that I had at the time. Not a good manager. It's Blue Jays opening day. Have you ever called in sick to go to a sporting event or any other excuse? I want to know what you played hooky for. When did you do it and why? Ken, what about you?
Hi, Mike. It's not work-related, but it was high school-related.
Sure.
And a buddy of mine, we decided it was a nice day, and I think we're grade 10 or 11, and we were not going to do our afternoon classes, so we headed home, and on the way home, we stopped at a mall. My buddy had to go into the bank, and we must have been loud or something because we walk into the bank, and the lineup turns around and looks at us. And my buddy's dad was standing in the line.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. I tailed it out of the bank. You're on your own, buddy.
That's hilarious. Now, did you go back to school?
The next day, yeah.
The next day, but not that you got out of the bank, but you still did not go back to class.
No, we stayed home for the afternoon.
Good man, Ken. Good man. I like that. When I was in high school, another one of the times, and this was a good one. I remember it so well still. My best friend and I mentioned earlier the one time I played. I don't do this a lot, but I'm just thinking on the stories. Apparently, I did it often enough. Play hooky from a conference, call in sick to work, got caught by my French teacher, hi Mrs. Pennington, in high school at St. Jerome's because she saw me out the window. And then another time where I did it much smarter. My buddy and I, we went to a pool hall and shot pool for the afternoon, way away from the school location, so you couldn't be seen, right? I always wonder, like, what did the adults, well, they didn't care. You're paying for your pool game, but the adults that saw you, they know you're of age, that you're supposed to be in school. But we weren't, and we shot pool for a couple hours that afternoon. It was good for us, wasn't it? Was it school? Was it work? We want to know today on the flip side. In honor of Blue Jays opening day, where so many have in the past called in sick, found an excuse to not go to work so they could go to the Blue Jay game. When did you play hooky? From school? From work? Why did you do it? Let us know on the flip side. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Every party has its pooper, and Theo sends me an email to Mike at 570news.com. I'm 43. I've never done it. Not once. No respect for it, so I didn't. Listen, Theo, I said I felt guilt, okay, for that time that my boss was a jackwagon. He should be the one that feels guilty making the workplace so miserable. But I did. I called in sick 2 days, middle of the week, during an important time at the radio station so I could go to New York with my buddy. I also played hooky from school on occasion. Sorry to Mrs. Pennington in grade 10 French back at St. Jerome's. Couldn't handle your class that day, Mrs. P. Couldn't do it. And then I don't remember why we skipped, other than to skip, I guess, when we went and shot pool all day. That was a nice, or an afternoon anyway. That was a nice afternoon. And then the conference I was supposed to be attending, I couldn't handle a day full of seminars, so I went to see a movie in the middle of the day instead. I went for the beginning and the end. Nobody missed me. Who misses Farwell anyway? Back to the phones for your stories. Al, good morning.
Morning, Mike. I remember every couple of years I see something on TV that reminds me of back in 1968. I was raised in Oakville, ended up going to George Brown College at Spadina in Nassau, and we were at lunch one day, and somebody at the table said, "Hey, they're starting a movie that's previewing today or whatever, running today, first day, Bullet."
Steve McQueen, baby.
You got it.
Yes, sir.
Talked about the greatest car chase and all that shit.
Couldn't agree more. Yep.
So we went, we definitely hit the movie theater that afternoon, and next day we got a little trouble, but
who cares? You saw the Mustang and Charger in a great car chase.
Right, back in 1968.
Fantastic, Al. I love it.
You're quite welcome. Unfortunately, I don't remember going to see the Stanley Cup parade.
Easy now, Al. Easy. Okay. Goodbye, sir. Al likes to poke the bear. I'm the bear. He's the poker. But I love it. And that's a great story. And it reminds me of that other time. Man, I guess I did do this a lot, but nobody cared at university. My buddy and I at University of Waterloo, poli-sci class, in the big lecture hall getting ready for the class. And my buddy looks at me and says, you know the Jays could clinch tonight, right? I'm like, what are we doing here then? This is back in 91. 92? Anyway, 91 or 91. And we're like, what are we doing here then? So we packed up our books, walked right out, and went to Toronto and saw the game that night. Because why wouldn't you? Who needed poli-sci class when the Blue Jays had a chance to clinch the pennant? Heather, good morning.
Hi, good morning, Mike.
When did you play? Go Rangers, absolutely. When did you play hooky?
Well, I'm a retired teacher, and I played hooky all the time in school and in university.
Oh, I thought you were going to tell me that you played hooky as a teacher, Heather.
Oh, yes, I did.
Okay.
For sure.
Good.
For sure. But one time we were all walking out in protest for our principal. I don't even remember why. And that's when I played hooky, but never went to the protest, right? I just went home and hung out with my friends. But I have a good story about playing hooky from church. So,
well, wait, but I'm sorry, Heather, but God knew.
I know he does. And you talk about guilt. Both my parents sang in the choir. It was upstairs in the balcony. And one Sunday, my brother and I just took the car and drove around town until church was over.
Uh-huh. And then Mom and Dad from up in the balcony didn't notice that Heather and her brother weren't there?
Correct.
Nice.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Just remember, when your dayeth come, he will judge you.
I know. Yeah, but it's good. It's okay to play hooky. You got to take some risks.
Atta girl.
Enjoy the sunshine.
I love it. Thanks, Heather.
Yeah.
Enjoy that sunshine today. You got to take some risks. Play a little hooky. Mark, when did you play hooky? School or work?
It was work, Mike.
Okay.
I was working afternoons in the mid-'80s.
Yep.
And I wanted to go to a Ranger game on a Friday night.
Oh.
So I called in sick, and I ran into my boss in the Blue Line Club.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, man. What a place to run into him, too.
Oh, tell me about it. So I got a bit of a tongue lashing the next day, but all was good.
Good man, Mark. Well done by you. You know what that reminds me of? That same place, the very first place I worked with a real job when I was done my paper route. I'm in high school doing that overnight shift at the factory. And the one time I get asked to work a double, which would carry me through the day on Sunday. And I'm always looking for the extra hours, except when I'm pretending there was a death in the family and I called in. I couldn't come in. But I didn't realize when I got asked to work that double that it was Super Bowl Sunday. So everybody was bagging off work so they could watch the Super Bowl. And I'm like, oh, why did I agree to this? I'm going to miss the Super Bowl because I'm working the afternoon shift on the Sunday now. Grant, when did you play hooky?
I think it was when I was working part-time at the hospital, and I went to a Ranger game, and my dad gave me a lecture afterwards and said, what would happen if they saw you there?
Yeah. What happens if you were like Mark and got caught by your boss in the Blue Line Club? Or if you were like Ferris Bueller when he took his famous day off back in 1986 and went to a Cubs game and caught a foul ball and was on the screen on the TV. But his vice principal, Mr. Rooney, somehow missed him, was looking away at the right time. But that's a dangerous, high-risk maneuver. Go to a game instead of going to work. A lot of people might see you at the game. Hey, enjoy that Blue Jays opener today, whether you're going legally or otherwise from work. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Jerry's email to Mike at 570news.com. Grade 11, Forest Heights. My buddy and I decided to leave mid-morning, go downtown, so we started hitchhiking, and the school doctor picked us up. We were quaking in our boots the next morning until we were not called into the office. Apparently, the doc did not know our names. Dodged a bullet there, Jerry. Who hitchhikes from Forest Heights downtown? 2 feet in a heartbeat, pal. Start walking. Anyway, lots of fun on the flip side. As always, I'm going to get you to the 570 News Center right now for an update. And then open phone lines for your Talkback Hour today. Federal election, anyone? Tariffs, anyone? Let's have a chat on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio.
Take out the papers and the trash, or you don't get no spending cash. If you don't scrub that kitchen floor, you ain't gonna rock and roll no more. Yakety yak.
Don't talk back.
Just finish cleaning up your room. Let's see that dust fly with that broom. Get all that garbage outside, or you don't go out Friday night.
Don't talk back.
Just reflecting on Matt Hutchison's update there at noon, I can only be one way with you, and that is honest. I don't have high hopes for the Blue Jays this year. I know hope springs eternal. Everybody's undefeated as the season begins. I don't know why I'm such a pessimist. Ian Hunter, our Blue Jay hunter, will join us every Wednesday morning during the season to keep us up to date on what's going on Blue Jays wise. Wednesdays, 11 a.m. here on the show. But I am not one of those who is incredibly hopeful today. Maybe it's the tariff threat hanging over our heads, and now we know next Thursday will be tariff day. It's an on-again, off-again relationship with Donald Trump, isn't it? The tariffs are coming. The tariffs are this much. The tariffs are that much. The tariffs aren't coming. He means business this time, we think, leading up to April the 2nd, next Thursday. This is what Donald Trump, the President of the United States, had to say from the Oval Office yesterday.
We're going to charge countries for doing business in our country and taking our jobs, taking our wealth, taking a lot of things that they've been taking over the years. They've taken so much out of our country, friend and foe, and frankly, friend has been oftentimes much worse than foe. But this is very exciting to me. This is the automobile industry, and this will continue to spur growth like you haven't seen. Before I was elected, we were losing all of our plants that were being built in Mexico and Canada and other places. Now those plants largely have stopped, and they're moving them to our country. So we'll effectively be charging a 25% tariff. But if you build your car in the United States, there is no tariff. And what that means is a lot of foreign car companies, a lot of companies are going to be in great shape because they've already built their plant. But their plants are underutilized, so they'll be able to expand them inexpensively and quickly.
I just wonder when the economy stumbles and the market crashes, will he reverse course? Because I suspect that's where we're headed economically, but we shall see. Your thoughts on that, the federal election campaign here in Canada? Anything else that's on your mind? 519-570-2545. Star 570, 1-800-570-5715. Tom, start us off on the Talkback Hour. Good afternoon.
How are you, Mike?
Good, thanks.
If you listen to Danielle Smith's speech, it's the first step to join the States. And she's going to be the first one. Like, you can laugh it off or not. She's going on her own. She's going to the States. She's probably making a deal right now.
So you think Alberta will become the 51st state?
Well, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and maybe even...
Does Danielle Smith speak for Saskatchewan and Manitoba, too?
Well, when they hear what she's saying, the kind of deal she's going to make, because that's working under the table right now. You can take it for a grain of salt, but this is what's happening.
What makes you so sure of that? What makes you so sure of it?
Well, because Trump has plans to take Canada, and we haven't seen them yet. This is just a scratch of the whole plan. It's very little, but
it's like the other plan that he put into a group chat and went to the editor of the Atlantic magazine, like that plan.
One more time, this is serious.
Okay.
This is what he wants to do. And the main thing to protect Canada is you got to send up to 5 million refugees out. We can't afford them. We're going into a big crisis. And anybody else that thinks it's different, they're laughing.
Okay, Tom. There you go. Those are bold words and a dire warning from Tom, who clearly has some inside information here. Alberta's gone. Saskatchewan, Manitoba to follow. And by the way, we need to get rid of 5 million newcomers to this country because we can't afford them. What a starting point for the Talkback Hour today. Joe, good afternoon.
Afternoon, Mike. I'm driving to you-know-where, so I'm rolling the dice here. You with me?
Yes, Joe, I'm with you. Don't just take advantage of the good signal. Go. Oh, my gosh.
The orange clown is acting up again, and he's putting everybody in jeopardy, including especially his own people. So I have a special request for you.
Okay.
We need the smartest people available to help dissect this and see try to project where it's going and how.
Joe, you make me want to. Oh, okay. Anyway, what I love is this. I love the insistence on participation in the program. Pull over, Joe. Just grab a coffee. Pull over when we've got the signal all the time. I might, Joe, you might go in the penalty box. I know I don't like to play this card, my show, my rules, but dang it with all the time. Joe, either you pull over or you don't get to play anymore. Okay? I'm sorry. I'm kicking you out of the sandbox. Something about the orange clown, I believe he means Donald Trump, and get the smartest people together to do what? I have no idea. I have no idea what Joe wants all the smart people to do because he's not smart enough to pull over when he has a good signal on his cell phone. I know you're smarter than that, though, and we'll continue our Talkback Hour today. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Just to show you the kind of guy that I am, how quickly I can get over things. Keep an open mind, etc. Joe is back on the phone with us. Joe, I'm going to start by telling you this, okay?
I already pulled over.
Good man. This is your last chance. I'm not even kidding. You're killing me every time you call.
Oh, my God. There's got to be a conspiracy. It's like I find every friggin' dead zone. Every time I call in.
But Joe, the conspiracy is between your ears. Just pull over your vehicle, buddy. When you got the spot, stay there.
All right.
Okay.
All right. I have a special request for you.
Yes.
Can you bring Ian Lee on the show, Professor Ian Lee, to discuss the ramifications of the orange clown playing with everybody's lives, including his own, and billions of dollars worth of industries and millions of jobs? Can you bring him on to tell us what he thinks is going to be the fallout and the most likely repercussions of this absolute horse crap that the orange clown is putting us through?
Yes, I can certainly get Ian onto the show. He's a tremendous guest, and he's got a great perspective. And I think you're onto this, Joe. What I can't understand is why Donald Trump does this when it's going to hurt the U.S. economy and cost U.S. jobs, too.
Do you think any of the people, the auto workers in particular, would have voted for him had they known this is what he was going to do to them?
Assuming that auto workers did vote for him, no, I doubt it. Unless they also buy into this whole idea that everything's just going to magically be produced in the United States again.
Yeah. Let me know how that goes for you.
Okay.
But it'll take 10 years to build all the plants that Trump is talking about.
Agreed.
He'll be long gone. Like you just can't flip a switch and then build a whole giant plant. It takes years. The orange clown doesn't get this.
All right, Joe.
Thank you.
Thank you for pulling over. Thank you for sharing your thoughts on the Talkback Hour. I agree with that. And in the clip you heard earlier today, and I played it just at the start of the Talkback Hour, Donald Trump points to production factories that exist today that are under capacity. Capacity could be ramped up overnight. It's going to be great, and we're going to repatriate all these jobs and all this money. We'll see how that goes. And it'll be long after Trump's gone that we see these plants built, if they do get built. 10 years, Joe says. Just be careful there for a moment, because I'm not entirely convinced that there will not be some idea or some plan hatched here to make it a third term and only 2 consecutive terms for Donald Trump. But even if it's not this Trump, there might well be a next Trump in the Oval Office. Don't forget that aspect of it as well. Wendy, good afternoon.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thank you. How are you?
I'm wonderful. You yourself?
Good, thank you.
Good. I listen to you every day. My husband's on the road, and he listens to you every day, too.
Well, I appreciate that very much.
To say that. The comments the gentleman had on Alberta, I'm sorry, but I know I'm a TikToker, and I watched it on there, and I saw the Premier talk about Alberta, and it's not Trump she's fighting against. It's the Liberals she's fighting against. So that's my comment on that one.
Wendy, I love that you just said you're a TikToker. What does that mean? You watch TikTok all day?
Pretty well.
Really?
No.
Well, why do you do that?
I don't trust the news on the TV anymore.
But you trust the news on the TikTok?
When it came to the truckers, there again, what they did to the truckers was terrible. I was on, people who have on lives on TikTok, and I was seeing a horse run over an old lady in a chair. And then when you watch it on TV, they're saying that someone threw the wheelchair. No, they did not.
Well, now we're going way back now to the convoy in Canada.
Yes,
and
the problem is with the convoy, there's still a lot of truckers that their bank accounts are still frozen.
Are they, though? Are you sure about that?
Yeah.
Did you learn that on TikTok, too?
I support the truckers 100%.
I totally get that, and I hear where you're coming from. Isn't it interesting that we have a call from Wendy today, a self-described TikToker, on the same day that we talked on this show about misinformation and disinformation and how social media platforms in particular are being exploited to lead us down a particular garden path. But Wendy saw it on TikTok, and so for Wendy, it's true. And I get that, but these are the challenges that we face today. Misinformation, disinformation, and the manipulation of social media platforms. It's your Talkback Hour right here on the good old AM radio. Reliable, traditional, accurate. 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Just remember that just because you saw it on TikTok doesn't necessarily mean it's true. If it's one thing that we took away from our conversation earlier today about misinformation and disinformation, it's that there is more emphasis on the consumer of information these days than ever before to ensure the accuracy and veracity of what it is they are consuming, be it reading, watching, listening, whatever the case may be. Be careful out there. Ibrahim, you're on the Talkback Hour. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mike. How are you doing?
Good, thank you.
Yeah, just following the comment from Tom from Alberta.
Yeah, he says Alberta's gone. Look out.
Well, that's true, but Mike, I'm sure you follow what going on with in Alberta. You know, you were like you were surprised or you pretend you don't know nothing about Alberta.
I know it's got all of our oil, Ibrahim, and we need to find a way.
Not only that,
okay.
Mike. They have grievances in Alberta.
Of course they do. Of course they. Yes. Yeah.
Those, if they don't address, this new prime minister, if the liberal one, if got elected, if the same business that Trudeau was doing for gas and cab on production and everything, it will be definitely Alberta the first province will be go to United States. If you remember back in John Jackson, what is his name? What's the former the premium of Alberta before this?
Jason Kenney.
Jason Kenney. More than half of Albertans, they say, they are not happy with the federal government, so they won't mind. They wouldn't mind.
Ibrahim, listen, I get it. I know where your argument is coming from, but I'm old enough to remember not once but twice when Quebec was going to leave too, and it didn't happen. And
but the problem, Quebec, they got everything. That's the problem, Mike.
Okay.
Everything the federal government is Quebec, they ask, they give them at the expense of other provinces. Even she has 9, the condition. She put it, if you remember last week, even this, if he could get elected, Mark.
So you think that Alberta is going to leave and join the United States too?
Of course, not only Alberta, the other provinces too. Saskatchewan is around that area also, they will live with them.
I have not heard Scott Moe say that though, Ibrahim.
But no. If we don't address the unity of the grievances of the provinces, we have to be first, we have to be united from the inside. This thing is, of course, open opportunity for Alberta to be.
But this is what both Pierre Poilievre and Mark Carney are talking about, breaking down interprovincial trade barriers, right? And if we can free up Alberta's oil and get it into other parts of this country, all the better.
Yeah, hopefully, that's what.
Okay. So if we're trying to do that, and we're going to do that, then maybe Alberta stays.
So hopefully.
Okay. Thanks, Ibrahim. Hopefully. You see, Ibrahim and I just solved the problem of Western alienation, just like that. What I am reminded of frequently is the incredible landmass that is Canada. And having lived west of the Rockies for even a brief time of my adult life, I get it. It is a completely different Canada west of the Rockies. And don't even get me started on northwestern Ontario. Get north of Parry Sound, you're in a different province too. It's a vast landmass we inhabit. This is the Mike Farwell Show. Your Talkback Hour continues. 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. How do you solve a problem like Alberta? Western alienation. Both Tom and Ibrahim are convinced if we don't get our act together here internally in Canada, Alberta, Saskatchewan, maybe even Manitoba will become external to us here in Canada. What a time we're living in. Talkback Hour continues. Your thoughts, welcome. Let's have a conversation, maybe even a wee debate. 519-570-2545, star 570, or 1-800-570-5715. Evan, good afternoon.
Farwell, how's it going?
Good, thank you. How's it going with you?
Good.
Good.
I just want to say about the federal election coming up.
Yep.
People have been asking me, who are you voting for? Well, I can tell you one thing. That's a personal question, and I don't prefer to answer it because we all have our preferences.
We do. And you know what? We're allowed to vote for whoever we want to vote for. And I would like to think that no matter who we vote for, our next door neighbor, if they voted for somebody different, would still be our friend. And we can still have conversations and maybe even barbecues with them. It doesn't have to be so incredibly personal. Mark Carney, of course, brought his Liberal campaign to Kitchener last night. And there were a couple of occasions during his speech that he was interrupted by hecklers.
I'm standing before you today. Very clever, very clever. Very clever. This country has given me everything. Gave me my family, my education, my values, which include values of tolerance.
Tolerance. I think he handled it pretty well, and maybe you can be tolerant of your neighbor if they vote differently than you. I don't know, just an idea. Kyle, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mike. Well, I want to go on the Alberta thing. I'm not saying that Alberta is going to separate, but I think that we should always be careful of a province separating from Canada. I don't think that the West is going to ever be, it's not going to ever happen to the West, because I think it's going to happen. You look at other countries around the world that have evolved and turned into different countries that were at least states or provinces before that. And, you even go back to history, like before World War I, it was the Austro-Hungarian Empire. That split, that had many states that were part of it that are now countries. So I don't think, just because Quebec, hasn't separated or tried to separate before, what's going to stop them or Alberta from doing it again? Like, you understand what I'm saying there, Mike?
Yeah, and you make a good point, Kyle, when you look back in history, because I guess in the grand scheme of things, we are but a young baby country, aren't we?
We are, and
yeah.
So I mean, like, anything could happen. But trust me, I'm like you. Do I want to keep Alberta? Absolutely. Do I want to keep every province? Absolutely. Do I think that we should, knock down those provincial borders and do more business in Canada? Absolutely. But I think we have to fix it, not just with Alberta, but other provinces as well, whether it's the East Coast or the West Coast. We really need to come together and figure out something that will work instead of fighting with each other all the time and putting up our backs and saying, but I could bring this to the table, but, I don't want this come through my province because it's going through Alberta or whatever. We just need to stop, and we really need to figure something out. So thanks, Mike. Have a great day, my friend.
All right, Kyle, thanks for the call. We always talk about 1867. Heck, Newfoundland and Labrador was what, 1949? We are babies. Maybe it will change over the time. I don't know. Anthony, good afternoon.
Mike, good afternoon. First-time caller, but I have to say I love your show, but that doesn't mean I have to agree with everything you say. So,
absolutely not. Good.
So I'll get to the point.
Okay.
Two things I want to say. I know you mentioned about the lady who talked about TikTok, and you're absolutely right. I don't support any of this so-called online stuff. But let's be honest. There is CBC, and there's 570, and there's 680 News. Who do you believe, like 680? Who do you believe? Because they're all pro-liberal. So anything that you hear, Richard, or your reporter, who's at Queen's Park, everything is all liberal. Everything that anybody else does is wrong. Whatever liberal does is like God sent. So let's be honest. Who do you believe? The news or something on the web? I don't know.
I have an answer for you, Anthony.
Go for it.
Me.
As I said, I love your show, and I respect that. But this is the problem I have, because it's a one-sided reporting all along. And just the second thought that I have, we're talking about, again, I'm conservative. I'm not going to hide that. But all the immigrant issues that we've got is thanks to liberals. Another 4 years, and they're going to bring another more immigrant issues. So I am not sure if we've not had enough of this problem or we are not yet content. Anyway, that's my thoughts. Thank you. I love your show again.
Thank you, Anthony. I appreciate that. And I'm happy to dialogue with somebody who doesn't always agree. I understand where you're coming from when it comes to bias. And let me take Anthony's point a step further about the problems that we have had on the immigration file lie almost exclusively at the feet of the federal Liberal government. Almost impossible to argue that, isn't it? They done gummed it up big time. And so if we vote in another Liberal government, do we expect it to be dramatically different on that particular file? It's a really good point, and I saw somebody else point that out this morning in reaction or response to the polling that we've been seeing with the surge in popularity for the federal Liberals. And his point was, take a government away and realize how quickly we forget. It becomes popular. And essentially, there hasn't been a federal government since January. There hasn't been a Trudeau around since he announced that he would be stepping down once a new leader could be appointed or elected. So here we are. Anyway, I think that's a good point. And so you forget maybe with the shiny new object that's out there. And now we're into a campaign, and maybe the campaign's become about Donald Trump. And you forget about the last 9-10 years and what it's been like in Canada under Justin Trudeau and the Liberals. I think that's a very fair point from Anthony. On the bias, look, I get it. We all have our own biases. Anthony admits he's a conservative. I assure you that if you don't like the liberal slant that you hear on one station, you can go find a conservative slant on another. I know you can, because I listen to all kinds of things. So, and let's be clear that just because you don't agree with the point of view doesn't mean it's inaccurate or false. It just means you don't agree. That's all. Facts are still facts. It's your Talkback Hour. The Mike Farwell Show continues, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. The Talkback Hour is the hour we set aside every day, noon until 1, to hear your thoughts. Back to the phones we go. Terry, good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon, Mike. I wish people, when they called in, that they would actually pull over, because a lot of times when they're driving with their Bluetooth, it sounds like they're underwater. I don't know if you remember years ago, Mike, there was talk of Alberta separating. And I remember I can't remember who the politician was, but he said if Alberta becomes a state, it would increase the IQ of both countries. So I don't know if you remember that.
Ouch, I don't remember that comment. I do remember the talk about Alberta leaving, but yeah.
But anyway, the reason I'm calling, Mike, is the last segment you had, booking time off work. I remember it was 2019, September. I won 2 Blue Jay tickets at a radio station with some lame question. And I actually booked the day off to go see the Blue Jays that afternoon. And that was the time when we actually had to drive up to the boardwalk to collect the tickets.
Oh, wow. You booked the day off, though, Terry. We were talking about not necessarily booking it off. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink.
Yeah, but you still have to call in, right?
Fair enough.
I called in. Mike, I've been at this company 18 years. I've called in sick 6 days, and that was one of the 6. And I wasn't sick. I just wanted to go see the Blue Jays.
Oh, okay, so you called in sick. I got you. Good for you.
Yeah, I had a sick day, so I might as well use it.
Sure.
But I'm just saying, in 18 years, I've missed 6 days, and that was one of them, just to go see the Blue Jays. So on your radio station, Mike. Anyway, yeah, have a good day.
Thanks, Terry. You too. That's what we're here for, to make you take your sick days. Kevin, good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon, Mike. A couple of issues here I just want to talk to you about. First of all these points that liberals are gaining, they shouldn't get too happy about it, because these are not actually people turning liberal. These are the votes that the NDP is losing. So, I mean, NDP is going to have a very dark future in a very soon, These are the people from NDP that, they have no other choice but to go liberal. Second to that, for me, on an election day, my first priority and the first issue that it matters to me, it's not Trump, it's not economy, it's not housing, it's nothing. For me, the number one is which one of the leaders is going to be tougher on the mass immigration and how we're bringing people with a criminal record in the different countries, and they're coming to Canada very easily. That's why the rate of crime is going up. As long as dealing with Trump, nobody can fight. It doesn't matter if it's Polyev, if it's Carney, if it's Trudeau. I mean, even Vladimir Putin has problem dealing with Donald Trump. He's a madman. It doesn't matter who we choose. It's not that we're going to say, Carney is going to deal better or Polyev is going to deal better. No, nobody can deal good with Trump. He's a madman. Nobody can deal with him. The European leaders are kind of puzzled to how to deal with this madman. So that's not the issue for me, that who is stronger against sanctions, against a tariff, But to me, whoever has the better plan for immigration, slow it down, filter it, make sure people who are qualified coming to Canada. I came here 44 years ago as an immigrant. It was so tough. The only way you could come to Canada was if you had a first relative, like brother, sister, mother, and the father. That's it. And now it's crazy. So that's my first priority on election day.
All right, Kevin. Appreciate the call. I don't know that we can draw a direct line between the level of immigration that we've had and the increase to crime. I'm not sure that's fair at all. I'd like to see the research that backs up that claim. However, when it comes to getting tougher on crime or increasing penalties, revamping the court system, whatever you want to call it, Kevin reminded me of a story I read in my morning paper. And the story in the paper reminded me of what's going on currently in Waterloo. For this election, the Conservative candidate in Waterloo first tried to win the nomination for the Conservative Party in Kitchener-Conestoga, was unsuccessful, and all of a sudden was just named. And parties do have the ability, legislatively, if you will, under party rules to do this, but it's not the way it's supposed to work. The riding association is supposed to do that groundwork, help find the potential candidates, run a nomination contest, and elect the best person. And then that person stands to run in the election. That didn't happen in Waterloo when the candidate was just kind of parachuted in. And it turns out this has been happening across the country. I read a story down east, New Brunswick or Newfoundland, forgive me for forgetting, but either way, somewhere down east where this also happened. And wouldn't you know, a former cabinet member in British Columbia's provincial government has also mysteriously been ousted in favor of a 25-year-old blueberry farmer. This candidate has decades of experience and is well known to voters. And the Conservatives said, nope, we don't want you. We're punting you aside. And we're going to let this post-secondary student, who's also a blueberry farmer, run for the Conservative Party in this British Columbia riding. So the former cabinet minister, provincially in BC, is running as an independent. But listen to what he said. He said, my politics align with those of Mr. Poilievre's party. I'm a fiscal conservative. I'm the guy that balanced the budgets. I believe governments should live within their means except in extraordinary circumstances. I'm on side with amendments to the criminal code that address public safety that I think is lacking. I think our military should be better financed and stronger in the uncertain world we live in. Who couldn't get behind a candidate like that? And for some reason, the Conservatives in British Columbia can't. This is the Mike Farwell Show, your 12 o'clock Talkback Hour, 570 News Radio, Rogers TV. Noon to 1 every day here on the program. We open the phone lines so we can hear directly from you during our Talkback Hour. We are coming to the end of our time, but there is still an opportunity for you to be a part of it. At 1 o'clock, we'll get you to the 570 News Center for an update, and then Now You Know with Rob Snow comes up until 3. Let's go back to the phones on our Talkback Hour. Afif, good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon, Mike. Two things. First of all, go Rangers tomorrow. Hopefully they win.
We're looking forward to it.
And second of all, what if I vote all of them and just say, oh, I don't want to vote any of them, so, like, I'll still get my vote in, but I just say I don't like any of them.
Yeah, we've always dreamed about that. I think since the movie Brewster's Millions, Afif, where you had a none of the above option.
Exactly. I kind of want that.
A lot of us do.
That's it, man.
All right. Thank you, Afif. It's the chicken and egg conversation, isn't it? Do we have low voter turnout because we have apathetic voters who just don't care? Maybe they aren't engaged in being citizens of their community or their country. Or do we have low voter turnout because the options being presented to us are not in the least bit palatable? I think it's the former more than the latter, to be honest with you. I think we are just not as engaged as we once were. We don't spend a whole lot of time thinking beyond our own homes. And in some cases, that's because there's so much to do there. And we're working so hard just to put that roast beef and mashed potatoes on the table every weekend. Hopefully with a little bit of gravy on Sundays, it would be nice. But we just get so immersed in almost survival, right? This paycheck to paycheck life in some cases, et cetera. We're just not as engaged as we once were. And I do hope we can start to reverse that. We've talked about it on the show. I think a key way to begin the reversal of that is putting a greater emphasis in civics or on civics in our schools. And maybe we can get to new generations that cared more. I think the relative peacetime too, 80 years since, we've really been engaged in anything that seemed some kind of threat. And maybe that means this time around, we're going to have an even greater voter turnout. I would love to see that because we seem to be facing down some sort of existential threat here in this election. I hope that leads to engagement at the polls. It could be, though, and many would disagree with me and say, no, it's the options being put forward. I don't like Carney, I don't like Poilievre, I don't like Singh, I don't like any of them. What am I supposed to do? I hope that you can find the person in your riding that best represents your values, whatever they may be, and vote for that person instead of perhaps the party leader. I hope that person does exist in your riding. And that, just like that, is all the time we have for today. I invite you to join me again tomorrow. We'll do this all over again from 9 until 1. The Coaches Show, getting ready for the big Rangers playoff game tomorrow night, the Friday 4 Roundtable, and more. Jen Tan is our board operator. My name is Mike Farwell. Bye for now.